Hello there! Welcome to the video. Yeah, like I mentioned at the end of the last one, I don't think we can leave the World Cup without looking at this game. Magnus kind of did it again. I think yesterday was much more impressive, but it's rare to see a player rated around 2700 go down like this in 2 consecutive games. So the world champion redeeming himself completely. Let's have a look. He's playing with the white pieces against Vladimir Fedoseev. He opens with pawn to e4. We have the Caro-Kann c6 and d4, d5. And Magnus goes for the advanced variation e5. Bishop to f5 and now c4. Not the most common option if we go back here, of course. Knight f3 is very much the main move, and I think the most common way to play these days is the short variation, which Nigel used to play to avoid theory, but nowadays it's basically more or less the main theory. So c4 tends to not to be played this early. So Magnus maybe experimenting a little bit, having some fun. He did yesterday with the King's Indian and it went quite well. So we have knight c3, bishop to b4. And here Magnus takes on d5. And I would have thought, just taking with a pawn should be fine for black. When you have French structure with the bishop already outside. So the kind of thing that, a Caro-Kann player wants. But Fedoseev took with the queen. And at least for me, this is kind of the start of black's problems in this game. He kind of lacks central control a little bit, and the lack of a deep pawn means that once white gets organized, there's always worry about the black squares, in particular this one. Let's say we got a knight here at some stage and this square. So losing a bit of central control. Okay, for the time being, queen d8, a3, bishop a5. He had to retreat the queen to keep the bishop here, otherwise a3, b4, and the queen would have been badly placed. Now knight g3 hitting the bishop, who must be protected. Knight to e7. Bishop to c4. Bishop g6. He decides at the end of the day he wants to keep the bishop. But now Magnus goes for h4. Typical in other lines of a Caro-Kann. And in many modern openings these days, white is trying to gain space with the h-pawn. And the bishop has to go to h7 and now queen g4. This is a little bit tender, and ideally we'd like to castle, but of course then we run into bishop takes on h6. So king to f8 was the awkward decision that black had to make. Magnus castled, knight to d7 and knight c to e4. And now we see the effect of not having the deep pawn. The bishop is pretty decently placed for attacking operations here, and the knight on e4 can jump into d6 at some stage. So black does not want to allow that and plays bishop to c7. The bishop retreats. I guess not to be hit by tempo, for instance. Knight b6 could be annoying at some stage with knight d5. Knight f5 was played. Now Magnus took. Queen has to retreat, and knight g3. We have to go back, and now the queen returns to g4. And this is a bit annoying because once while we're hitting this pawn, we can't really move the king, and then we can't connect the rooks. So it creates a bit of a problem here for black. He ends up playing c5, but then we see one bad thing about having the queen and the king on the same diagonal. Magnus plays bishop d2. So now whenever you open this diagonal, you're in trouble because the bishop lands on b4 and it's protected. So Fedoseev prefers rook d8 at the moment. f4, why not? We have a rook already on the f-file by castling. Meanwhile, black has a king on f8, so the optimal target in a chess game. Knight b6, bishop c3, and this is not really protecting the deep pawn because black wasn't really, again, threatening to take it because of this. It's more so that if we ever play d5, we are protecting the e-pawn. And also just getting the bishop off the d-file where the rook is. So a preparatory move, we would say, knight d5 and now f5. And this allows black to jump in with 93, but we don't care. The ultimate goal is the king. So if we were to take this, it looks like big trouble. We could even, well, it's probably best just to take, I think, and black is in huge trouble. Now we're trying to take, and you can't bail out really, because you don't have any good way to protect your f7. So now we're trying to take, and if you protect, we take with a bishop, a nice trick. Queen takes and queen takes. And black is going to have only a rook for the queen. Has to take here, and we win. We are winning. So queen f3, let's go back. So instead, Fedoseev took on f5, but now Magnus starts the steamroll. The central duo has moved forward to d5 and e5. And this looks devastating for black. You know, the bishop is under attack, so we cannot take on d5. Bishop e6 was played. But Magnus calmly just played bishop c4, blocking black's pieces. Now this is bad. Note that if we take here, I believe we do something like this and play e6, and black is basically toast. We're going to take on f7. If we play this, we can take. We take with the queen, queen g6, we win a queen. And here we play this, and you can't stop this threat. So he did not take. Instead, played king g8, trying to get out of the line of fire on the f file. But then d6. And look at these pawns. Queen h4, hitting the bishop. So we protect it. b3. Simple chess, just keeping control. Control and then strike. Queen e2. Setting up a big strike. We're threatening to take this and play e6, and everything falls apart. Queen g4. Magnus takes anyway. Power chess. Again he sacrifices an exchange, and again kind of on the same square. Yesterday it was on the f4 square and he had the black pieces, so now we flip it around and he's actually on f5. And believe it or not, we have a similar result. Okay, queen takes f5. We have to look at what happens here. Let's say e takes f5. Now we take this and something like rook f1, and the pawns is too strong. There could even be sacks where we play e6, or e6 is a threat right now. And once again, black is stuck with dead pieces all around the board. Beautiful domination play here by Magnus. We can also take on e2, but then very similar, we just return. Actually, we play something like this first, and then return to c4. And you know, these moves are going to come. Everything will fall apart. Black has bad pieces, and according to the computer, game over. So here, queen takes f5 was played by Fedoseev, rook f1, bishop d2, making the queen go back to d8, and the queen back to g4, I think for the third time, right? So look at the domination still, you know, very similar to yesterday. Black's pieces are all horrendous. We have a rook as a blockader against these powerful pawns. We all know that the best blockader is the knight or the king, if it's possible. Meanwhile, this bishop is in a close diagonal. This is behind the king, and again, this is bad. I guess, you know, maybe that's our thumbnail, right? So a6, and now Magnus strikes again. Another sack, rook takes f7, and it's basically GG here. He took with the king, he takes with the rook. We're gonna penetrate in any way we please, basically, because black's pieces can't do anything. He ended up taking with the king, but it doesn't really matter. Queen takes. Magnus made a few checks here. Repeated before going e6 here. And now we'd love to take the pawn, but there's mate, of course, so we tried to avoid it with queen f6. But then Magnus took the rook, regaining some material. He's still down the exchange. But look at this rook. And again, a beautiful piece of domination. Again, black is in a kind of zugzwang. His pieces are completely dominated. Bishop d8, bishop e6. And there's no way out for the pieces. The king is not coming out, ever. Where are you going to go with the king? You can only shuffle between these two squares if the bishop were to leave, and the same for the rook. It can only shuffle here. So he tried to make some square for the rook, but simply king f2. Okay, we try this square, but we just take it. Now you have this square, and you can rotate your pieces, your king and your rook to this square. But then what? Very similar to yesterday's game. Beautiful. So he starts to empty the pawn moves, and Magnus just calmly plays the king, b4, takes. And I'm not sure this move was played, probably it was, but it's completely game over. I think Fedoseev resigned here. Let's say he plays something like a5, we can just bring the king. We can even bring it, I think, the other way around. I don't think black can do anything in the meantime. But this is simple, bishop g5 next, and we're gonna queen. Let's say a4. Now if you take, I'll queen, and if you move away, then I'll actually swing the bishop around somewhere. And let's say you push the pawn, and now you get made it a beautiful and fitting ending to a beautiful game. So well done, Magnus, and well, he did pretty well in the classical portion in the World Cup. I think he won 8 games and drew 6, gained rating. So it's going to be a tough task for Nepo later this year, and I'm still tipping Magnus to retain his World Championship title. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I think it's impressive, but who knows? Looking forward to your opinions, and see you soon in another chess video. Bye bye.